I'd like to know how we can apply Buddhist teachings to better navigate our relationship.
Regarding the dynamics of interpersonal relationships, 3 points are particularly crucial. First, you should always show sincere respect to those who are in positions above you. Strive to live in perfect harmony with the people who are your peers and equals. Then for those below you, those who are beneath you, treat them with compassion and care.
Now it is time for our question and answer session. Let me start by asking the Master a question. Respected Master, some of your previous translation works were mainly Tibetan Buddhist works, right? Specifically, specific texts from the great Tibetan Tripitaka. What was the thought or the opportunity that led you to write Youth is Cruel and Tales for Transforming Adversity? These much more readily accessible and straightforward, simple to understand works.
It's basically like this. Starting from 1997 or 1999, I worked as a translator for a period of about 10 years. I was translating all the time before 2009. The sheer volume of the translation work was quite large, but later I deeply realized that during the careful translation process, one simply cannot be overly secular or superficial in one's approach. If it is too secularized, remember that these authors were all ancient and realized spiritual masters. Their original words would be significantly compromised and lose their meaning, so the language cannot be too secular in tone. If we truly follow original Buddhist teachings and the teachings of those great masters at that time, many people today would find it quite difficult to understand. I translated many books in the past. To put it simply, many publishers back then did not want to publish them. And many people simply could not understand them. That was the situation. Later, I thought, if I wrote a few books based on simple, practical stories, touching on social issues that people today really care about, could it be of some help to modern people? So, I ended up writing the series of books you just mentioned.
Thank you for your response, Master. I have another question for the Master. We know you launched the Initiate Compassion Initiative, calling on everyone to rescue animals while not ignoring the vulnerable groups around them. So, Master, you have visited so many countries and have come across many people and things. Do you have any particularly experiences in this regard?
Actually, for a certain period of time, I was consistently releasing content about my daily life. I think protecting animals is very important. Nowadays, many people treat all forms of life, the physical bodies of animals, as just another source of food. The immense pain of them being slaughtered is something no one considers. It is very cruel. As we all know, we consume a vast number of animals every single day. But we never think about the fact that they have feelings. If we humans were being eaten by another species like this, only then might we truly realize that life is incredibly precious and fragile. Later on, I spent a lot of time thinking about the situation, and it wasn't just about the suffering of so many innocent animals being killed all around us. For us as humans, there are actually many other important things that truly deserve our attention, particularly those with wealth and status who live very comfortable lives. Their wealth might be enough that they never face a single material hardship in this lifetime. But they overlook that there are still many people who can't afford food or clothes, and some can't even afford school. Yesterday, the first thing I asked in Singapore was, are there people here who find it very difficult to attend university? They said that for university, as long as you pass your exams, there won't be any issues at all. I thought, wow, this is a huge difference compared to other places. In other places, I have seen many, especially one particular story that I just can't forget, which happened about 5 years ago. There was this one young child who was in a position where they simply couldn't go to school at all. His family's situation was extremely difficult. He had such a helpless expression, a very sad expression, as he wept to me about his family's situation. Later on, I gave him a helping hand, and now he has already found a steady job. But that scene from back then has always stayed with me. It is something that I simply cannot forget. When people actually need to reach out and ask for help, sometimes their eyes, they convey a state of being that is incredibly challenging to express in words. But, except for a select few, most people might not necessarily see it. Each of us walks our own individual path to success, rarely caring about how many other people are walking right beside us. A couple of days ago when we went to Cambodia, we made a point of visiting refugee areas and orphanages. At that specific moment, the feeling I had was, I have been to so many large cities before without really feeling much of anything. But when I reached those very poor places, I truly felt it. There are still people in the world living in such conditions. What kind of methods and strategies should we use to try and help them? I also especially hope that many of you here today will deeply care for the diverse animals living around us in the future, and also care for the many truly unfortunate people in the wide world all around us.
Thank you for your response, Master. So, I won't take up any more of everyone's time. Let's give the audience here a chance to ask some questions.
Greetings, Master. Like many of the university students who are studying here, in the future we'll all face work and starting a family, along with a wide range of life choices and challenging obstacles. Isn't that just like the various sufferings in life you previously talked about? When we pursue more material things and better jobs, doesn't that essentially mean, isn't this a particular form of human suffering itself? So, should we strive to achieve these life goals first, and only then work toward achieving so-called letting go? Or should we just bypass this detour entirely to find true fulfillment in our lives by releasing our attachment to everything first, and then gradually working towards self-realization?
Actually, we need to recognize the existence of suffering, but at the same time, we must also have a sense of pursuit. We should set clear goals for our family, our work, and our life. Could we say that is just a kind of human desire? Or should we not pursue them and simply let go? Actually, no. What we mean by letting go, Buddhism also teaches us that having excessive greed and an overwhelming amount of desire will actually become a major source of suffering. This is an irrational state of mind, but normal pursuits are still necessary. Normal pursuits actually become the driving force of society, and an absolutely vital and indispensable source of strength in family life. As university students gathered here today, it is very necessary to build a stable family foundation and establish a successful professional career. Furthermore, living in this world, every individual should strive to survive through proper and normal methods and channels. What I am asking of you today, this is not to suggest that everyone should give up all their personal pursuits and goals just because of the fact that life involves suffering. That is not what I mean at all. I'm talking about the burden of excessive desire and the constant pursuit of vanity. Like many luxury goods nowadays, and all the different various forms of competition for personal fame and worldly wealth, these are entirely unnecessary. Ensuring your necessary self-survival and the stability of a normal life, especially for every one of you gathered here today, should be firmly established. But in doing so, you must carefully maintain a proper sense of proportion in your actions. In our modern society today, we have what is often called the herd effect. If just one person buys a piece of expensive designer clothing, it seems like everyone else feels the need to buy it too, regardless of the actual cost. It's as if people believe that having enough money can solve every problem. Okay, so the pursuit begins. Indulging in far too much luxury, stretching oneself way too far beyond one's actual means. Because our abilities are limited. Some people are very wise, while others, no matter what, have limited intelligence. Some people are in a very good financial situation, while others just can't make it, no matter what. Based on your own abilities and conditions, pursue and accomplish your life goals. I believe this is absolutely necessary.
Thank you, Master.
Venerable Khenpo Sodargye, respectful greetings to you. After listening to your lecture today, regarding the profound realization that life is suffering, I truly feel that life is incredibly bitter. I'd like to ask Khenpo though, does emphasizing life as suffering make Buddhism and life in general seem a bit pessimistic? Once we realize that life entails suffering, how do we overcome that pessimistic mindset?
In Buddhism, if something is inherently optimistic, yet we obscure the truth through exaggeration or fabrication, twisting its originally positive nature into a pessimistic facade, then we have violated the true essence and betrayed the ultimate truth. However, if Buddhism directly exposes the genuine suffering in life, the suffering we have no choice but to acknowledge, that is not a violation of the truth. Why do I say that? Because what I am describing to you here in this moment today, for instance, the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death, when you compare it to the so-called happiness that many people experience in their ordinary daily lives, there is still a very significant difference. When we first begin to understand this concept, many people have this feeling, You see, life can seem so beautiful, but Buddhism suddenly makes everyone's inner mood start to feel very heavy and somber. In that case, does it mean there is no more optimism left in life? Is there truly no hope left for us to find? Actually, that is not the case. There's a Buddhist sutra called the Sigalovada Sutra. The Sigalovada Sutra also mentions many wonderful joys we experience in our lives. But it is truly undeniable that in the course of our lives, you can observe yourself. From morning to night, you can count how many hours you're actually feeling genuinely optimistic and hopeful, and how many hours you feel pessimistic. You might complain about society, feel an inner sadness, and just feel unhappy about so many things. We don't need to ask anyone else about this. We know it ourselves. It's fine if you don't accept Buddhism, but from the moment you wake up until late at night, today, tomorrow, and over the next 3 days, you can observe your own state of mind. Do you believe that optimism is the majority view, or is it actually pessimism that is more common? Or perhaps you could look back and reflect over the last 20 years of your life. Currently, several universities here in the country, when they conduct statistical studies among many different college students, have found some interesting results. Positive, virtuous, or optimistic words are rarely found in their slang. They frequently say things like, "so annoying," or "is that for real?" "So sad," "what a hassle," or "I really hate this," complaining about the state of society. These are very common expressions. Generally, in our daily lives, so happy, so grateful, so joyful, so comfortable. For many of us now, logically speaking, for example, when it's hot outside, the weather is absolutely beautiful today. When it rains, I'm so very happy it's raining, the AC is great. Logically, one could say that, but many people just don't. It's far too hot. It's absolutely miserable. It's way too cold. It's so miserable. Using AC is bad for your health. This is wrong. That's wrong. Like you, perhaps, regarding the government too. There are far too many outsiders, and that's not a good thing at all. Why is the government trying to attract so many people? Too few people, the economy won't grow. What now? It's the same with your family and friends. There are so many complaints. If you don't acknowledge and address these resentments, or if you don't accept certain Buddhist viewpoints, that's fine. However, you must use a truly impartial wisdom to observe. Consider the words that you find yourself using every single day. Are there more positive ones or more negative ones? Would you say your mindset is more positive or more negative? If it's mostly negative, Buddhism is quite simply revealing this truth at this present moment.
Greetings, Master. I have a question for you. We know Buddhism has many profound principles and great wisdom. However, I personally feel that as a student, we do not typically have a great deal of direct contact with these principles. Only when we are quite unhappy, for example, failing an exam, or having an argument with a friend, when we are in need of comfort, will we ever consider seeking this kind of deep peace and solace, or pursuing this positive energy. But when we are happy in our daily lives, we wouldn't think about these things. So I think this is a significant problem we face. I would like to ask if the Master has any specific advice to help us out. So it's not just when we are suffering that we think of these principles, but rather we can keep learning and understanding them daily. Thank you.
I actually think about your question a lot too. Today, when many young people are presented with a genuine opportunity to seek wisdom, they basically don't care at all. Even if someone speaks of it, they might just scoff at it, dismissively saying, "This is just a religion, this is nothing but superstition." Or, "You're not old enough yet. It's certainly not the right time for you to study Buddhism." It appears that in countries like Thailand and Cambodia, studying Buddhism and understanding religion is seen as a highly noble pursuit. This is because their official state religion is Buddhism. In their schools, if someone believes in Buddhism or if someone is studying the Dharma, it is something very worthy of respect. Because their king places such high importance on it, Buddhism is integrated into every aspect of their lives. Even when you open a magazine, the very first pages will feature images of Buddhism and monastics. Including on broadcast television, there are many distinct differences. This kind of national education is delivered in a very direct way. Even if you haven't studied it thoroughly, then your heart starts to feel, oh, Buddhism is really deeply profound. It is quite possible that in many other places it's not promoted in schools. Especially in our modern era we live in, which has become an economic tide that deeply and strongly impacts people's hearts. Not to mention you university students, even within some of our monastic communities, there are many people who spend their time playing on their mobile phones all day and do not like studying sutras at all. There are quite a few cases just like this. In this situation, when our daily lives are going along quite smoothly, and when seeking wisdom and insight, especially when we are in our youth, one must come to understand that beyond art and philosophy, there are higher levels of religious practice. This kind of practice is something we can actively pursue right now in a very real and certain sense. I was speaking with some teachers earlier today, and they mentioned that some students, when it comes to religious lectures, might feel like they are a bit of a waste of time because of their exams. However, some teachers believe that we are actually being tested every single day. In any case, those exams are merely a temporary challenge. The mental adjustment found in religion is significantly more important than any single exam or leisure activity. So, our current set of values is linked to society, the environment, and our education system. There's a connection there. Of course, in time, many wise people will adjust through their own efforts. I think as the human economy continues to develop, ultimately, we will strive to attain spiritual fulfillment and profound mental wealth.
Thank you, Master.
Hello, Master. Currently, I'm working with a business partner running a company that produces pet food. My question is about a conflict I feel regarding my profession, because I am a vegetarian myself. I've been committed to a vegetarian diet for more than 8 consecutive years. However, pet food is usually made out of meat products. So my question is, do you think, considering the fact that I am a vegetarian, would there be any potential conflict in doing this job? Thank you.
Actually, in a certain sense, there might be some conflict. But in this world we live in, I personally believe that a vegetarian diet has tremendous benefits for our own health. Many of our deeply ingrained human habits and psychological flaws often make us mistakenly believe that we simply cannot survive without eating meat every day. As a matter of fact, specialists in modern medicine, professional nutritionists, and other Western experts working across these scientific fields have observed and documented the fact that within the complex systems of the human body, if there is an excessive or disproportionate intake of animal meat and blood products, it actually causes a considerable amount of detrimental harm to one's overall life expectancy. Thus, since ancient times, vegetarians, wise elderly individuals, and Zen masters, these individuals have lived remarkably long lives and have enjoyed good health throughout their lives. This longevity is, to a certain extent, linked to their strict vegetarian diet. In this process, I also sincerely hope that, regardless of the project, job, or business venture you decide to start, you should use your wisdom to observe and analyze, and then we can evaluate and choose the most effective path forward. As for the specific and particular details, I do not have a full understanding of the contradictions within the industry you mentioned.
Thank you very much for that. I have a second question that I would like to ask. It is specifically regarding the issue of the goals. We often say plans can't keep up with changes. And there's a famous saying that, a life without a goal is like a ship that has completely lost its course. So the question I want to ask you is, do you think we should set specific goals? Or should we just go with the flow of life, so to speak?
I truly feel that it's vital for everyone to have a clear and meaningful goal in life, even though we might find that some of our specific plans will change quite rapidly. The driving forces of impermanence in life that I was mentioning can also happen at any time. However, if we live without any clear life goals and simply continue to move forward blindly without a sense of direction, it is actually quite detrimental to our own well-being and can be equally harmful to the people around us as well. Many things here show that this is a country governed by the rule of law, which is significantly different from many of the other locations we encounter, but our primary goals and core objectives must be maintained. I prefer the idea that no matter what specific task I am currently doing, first I must carefully consider the situation again and again. After this thinking, one must choose the right goal to pursue. Even if the final result falls short and the goal isn't achieved, I will still have a clear conscience. When I am carefully choosing a goal for myself, I look at both the positives and the negatives. I might look at the negatives a bit more often. Nowadays, many people set very beautiful and ambitious goals. Many people only consider the positive side. I often see some ambitious entrepreneurs who only ever talk about making money, talking much more about the specific profit side of making money in their business. When a company fails and loses money, the personal defeat that brings, along with all the negative ripple effects, that is something a lot of people just don't think about. I often hear people in the professional business world talking to each other about these issues. During the course of their discussions, I frequently feel that their collective wisdom in this particular regard still needs improvement. Why is that? In everything we do, we must have a clear and correct goal. But for a correct goal, both the positives and the negatives must be considered. In case some unpredictable negative outcomes occur, adversities, obstacles, or detours arise, how will you respond? This point is very important. Nowadays, many people, in almost any matter of their daily lives, might consider this during the planning process. If not, especially for many young people today, they tend to focus only on things that are beautiful and inherently optimistic. But they might consider the pessimistic side much less often. On one hand, they may lack life experience. Looking at it from another perspective, their life experience and knowledge are still a bit insufficient. Actually, when people reach a certain stage in their lives, life experience becomes richer and richer. But when it's exceptionally rich and full, life can feel very short. Some of you students sitting here today might feel that life is a long journey ahead of you. Thinking back to when I first arrived in this country all those years ago, it feels like in just the blink of an eye, 14, maybe even 18 years have already slipped by. It is impossible for me to ever go back to that specific moment in time now. So for many of you students here as well, right from the very beginning as you build your lives, it is essential to be filled with a sense of hope. But you also need to manage the inherent disadvantages and challenges of both sides, which I believe is indispensable.
Thank you very much for your answer. I appreciate that.
Respected Master Khenpo Sodargye, hello. My question is this. You just mentioned that interpersonal relationships are incredibly important for all of us. I'd like to know how we can apply Buddhist teachings to better navigate our relationships in our daily lives and our studies. Thank you.
I think that when we are learning to handle our interpersonal relationships, I am reminded of what I just mentioned about my teacher, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok. When he was staying at the Singapore Buddha Sasana Society, he specifically taught the Manjushri Great Perfection and gave several other related and important spiritual teachings. In those teachings, actually, he had also mentioned it elsewhere. However, he emphasized this point even more right here. Regarding the dynamics of interpersonal relationships, 3 points are particularly crucial. First, you should always show sincere respect to those who are in positions above you. To your superiors, mentors, and organizational leaders, you must show them a high level of professional respect. You shouldn't disregard their authority or guidance and other similar behaviors. Strive to live in perfect harmony with the people who are your peers and equals. Because with equals, in the process of interacting, it is quite likely that you might feel competitive, jealous, or even arrogant towards them. For those who are your equals, such as colleagues on the same level, you must be able to assess and understand that individual's specific situation. You need to know how to speak, how to mediate, and how to cultivate a positive relationship. Then for those below you, those who are beneath you, whether in terms of their wisdom or their own personal ability, those who seem to be below me in various ways, treat them with compassion and care. Personally, I think this is a deeply profound and meaningful saying. When it comes to human relationships, I've also encountered some people are exceptionally good to those in positions above them. Every single day, they constantly try to curry favor right in front of them. Even without a natural smile, they often spend time practicing their expressions before them. They doesn't have to put in much effort. Resources and power simply gravitate toward them. But when it comes to their peers or people of lower status, their relationships are terrible. This won't do either. Some people struggle to get along with their superiors and often look down on them. However, they are perfectly comfortable with those of the same rank or those in middle-level positions. However, if you do this, your boss will be unhappy. And it's very easy, in any given situation, for them to create all sorts of obstacles for you. With just one word or one action, they can have you removed or whatever. Especially in today's society, one sentence can easily do it. So I've seen many people who have been laid off who didn't really know how to deal with their superiors. It's not about insincerely sucking up to your boss, but we still need to report to them on a regular basis, talk with them often, and show them the proper respect they deserve. After all, they are your appointed leaders. So, how exactly should we go about treating them? For example, when you're a student, you must respect your teacher. When you're with family, you must respect your elders. When you're in a company or an enterprise, there are layers of leadership above you. There's one layer after another nowadays. Some people only have a good relationship with one person and ignore everyone else. But at a certain point, these people will also invisibly drop a bomb on you. In the end, your life goes bang and there's nothing you can do. That's a real possibility. But some people are only fine with those of middle or high status. Toward those of lower status, including those below you, I've seen some people who have achieved a bit of success, who treat their own nannies and drivers and other vulnerable groups with a complete and utter lack of respect. They don't treat them as human beings. Their behavior it's incredibly difficult to witness. Actually, this is also entirely unacceptable and irrational. When you become like this yourself, you are also, in Buddhism, we often say, for example, that kings and high-ranking people only receive their karmic rewards by showing respect and bowing to others. These people of lower status, they might have been powerful people in the past. If they often cheated, discriminated against, or threatened others, they become lowly individuals in this lifetime. So, if we truly want to know how to properly conduct ourselves in this world, I personally feel that these 3 sentences from His Holiness regarding current interpersonal relationships, whether for students, young people, or the elderly, at any level of society are vital. One must maintain good relations with superiors, live in harmony with those of equal status, and treat those below with compassion and care. If you're able to do these things, then at the very least, people at all levels will speak highly of you. Even if you don't happen to get along with someone, you will still have a completely clear conscience.
Thank you very much, Master.
Hello there, Master. I would like to ask you a quick question. Was Buddhism your very first choice? If it was before you made your choice, did you ever compare it with other religions? For example, religions like Christianity, and then eventually decide to choose Buddhism?
The choice of Buddhism, in fact, perhaps is also related to the karma from my previous life. In addition, the environment I was born into was a place where everyone believed in Buddhism. So ever since I was a child, from the moment I came into this world, when I opened my eyes, the world around me, including the voices of my parents, everything around me was immersed in a Buddhist way of life. So as soon as I opened my eyes, it became a Buddhist world for me. In the end, there was nothing I could do to change that. Maybe this is a kind of karma from a previous life, whatever the case may be. But I have a deep sense of respect for studying and learning about other religions. This includes Christianity and Islam, as well as Taoism and Confucianism. The significant role that these other religions play in human society, it simply cannot be compared to our current laws. Because throughout the very long and complex course of history in this world, they have always had a profound effect on our inner spirit, serving as a kind of spiritual cleansing and internal adjustment. So, the real benefits that religion brings to all of humanity, these are things we all truly ought to deeply understand and appreciate. As for me personally, I am a Buddhist, but I also study other philosophies frequently. And at the same time, I have great respect for people of other religions as well. That is because when we have an open mindset, in fact, some of the principles of truth, goodness, and beauty in other religions are also very moving. For example, in Catholicism, there is Mother Teresa. I frequently enjoy reading her biographies and life stories. Among leprosy patients, she was unafraid of being infected herself and was eager to help others. Even as a Mahayana Buddhist, I feel deep admiration for such a heart. The subjects that I study are always centered around the concept of bodhicitta all day long. But if I were requested to go and work among leprosy patients every day and help others unconditionally, perhaps I haven't reached that level yet myself. Is this the result of religion, or is it her personal spiritual strength? I am still reflecting on this. So when we look at other religions, there are indeed many things that are truly worth our learning, as they have contributed significantly to the betterment of our society and the progress of humanity. Many deeply touching stories like these continue to happen every day. For me, my choices are like this too, because when I open my eyes, this is the world I find myself in.
All right, thank you.
Greetings, Master. I was also once a student at NUS. I am very grateful to my alma mater for giving me this opportunity to attend such a truly exceptional and inspiring lecture. I would like to ask you a question, Master. Right now, I feel a significant amount of pressure at work. Every day I have to handle many things. Every one of these tasks requires me to complete them in the shortest time possible. So I often find myself in a very anxious and stressed state. Because this situation has lasted for quite a long time, honestly, I feel that my patience is steadily becoming thinner and thinner. I often feel impatience with myself and with my colleagues. Sometimes I experience a sense of frustration and even a certain irritability. I would really like to ask the Master how to transform this state. Thank you.
This is how I see it. Many of you say that you are under a lot of pressure. In a very real sense, people in the modern world do indeed experience quite a bit of daily pressure because the pace of life is getting faster and faster. Just now, we were asking whether the pace is faster in Hong Kong or in Singapore. One person suggested that it should be a bit faster in Hong Kong. Maybe Singapore is still a bit slower. Then we asked about pressure. Is it Hong Kongers who are under more pressure or Singaporeans? It seems that Singaporeans are facing more intense pressure, but this kind of pressure, in fact, we can transform it into a positive source of motivation. Now, why exactly is that the case? Sometimes facing a certain amount of pressure for young people, if you don't have any health problems and you are genuinely happy and consistently optimistic, then actually, whether it's going to work or facing many problems, we should be able to handle it easily. No matter what we do, we should treat it as a kind of enjoyment. Don't treat it as a kind of suffering. It is because your unique destiny and your talent, in fact, doing this job is closely connected to your fate. So I take this opportunity just as an illustration. For example, if I were to become a professional bus driver, every day I would drive while admiring the flowers along the way, and hearing the voices of all those tourists would also be a very valuable kind of learning experience for me. I read in a book once, what exactly does it mean to be a modern person? It means doing many things in a short period of time. That is the definition of a modern person. You just happen to meet all the criteria of a modern person. Because in this day and age, everyone needs to... Nowadays, technology is so advanced that you can just send someone an email and so on. Before, people met in person often, but now that has changed. Everyone has a computer or a phone, sending messages in all sorts of ways. We have to decide which things to do and which not to. And at the same time, so many ideas and cultures from all over the world are intertwined. In such a tough environment, it's exactly like that rhythmic sound you often hear in old movies. If we keep up with this fast pace, our pace might get faster and faster. It's a very important form of training for our mental well-being and also for our physical health. Yesterday, when we went to the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple, there were about 6 or 7 floors. We walked all the way to the top floor without taking the elevator. I just walked down the stairs. I said, this is to exercise my body. People these days walk so fast, like in Singapore. I wondered whether I was going fast going downstairs, so I just ran down. After coming down, I felt truly relaxed. It should be quite beneficial for the knee joints because people really need to stay active. So I think your mindset, sometimes when you're a bit busy, don't treat it as something so painful. Sai, back to work today and then back to work again tomorrow. Didn't I just say ants and bees go to work every day too? And they're even busier and faster at work than we are. But they're still very happy and their lives are full of motivation. So we shouldn't keep thinking, oh, it's so painful. Actually, this feeling is created by your own mind. Because that's just how the world is nowadays. We definitely have to work. But work won't... I'm also running around from place to place. But I feel like it's actually quite okay for me. It seems like a specific kind of exercise, and I believe it's quite manageable.
Thank you, Master.
Respected and most honorable Khenpo Sodargye, hello. The question I'm about to ask you today is actually quite a personal one. For a long time now, I have always been searching for an answer. What is the true and ultimate meaning of human existence in this world? I've always been searching for an answer. Why am I in this world in the first place? Every day I keep thinking, Every single day that I can breathe, walk, eat, and sleep, does that really mean I am truly living? Because of this, sometimes I set specific goals for myself. But even when I finally reach that goal, I feel like I've lost the meaning of life again. Then I set another goal. So I don't know what I should actually do. Should I set lower goals or higher ones? If I place them any higher, I can't reach them, and it gets confusing. Okay, thank you.
Yes, your question is very insightful and sharp. I've had similar thoughts and reflections to those you just mentioned sometimes too. Because when the goals are set far too low for us, it feels like there's nothing in life worth striving for. Even your very own Singapore national anthem is about onward Singapore. If we're moving forward, the goals should be set a bit higher. But if they're set far too high, that brings its own kind of struggle. But regarding this question, I think for some positive goals, you should aim for something a bit more ambitious. For example, in terms of your life direction and the things you choose to pursue, you should do things that are meaningful. When it comes to your future life, no matter what aspect it is, you need to analyze whether what you're pursuing. For example, if you want to be a teacher, then be a truly good teacher. If you set a much higher goal among teachers to be one of the very best in your field, I want to set a relatively high goal for myself, and then move straight forward in that direction. But if you think about it, if your goals are, for example, driven by desire or competition, and they don't have much significance for society or for yourself, there are a lot of such goals nowadays. For these kinds of goals, I think they shouldn't be set too low, but also not too high. Otherwise, as you continue along your journey, you might end up losing your sense of direction. At a certain point, it could even potentially harm yourself and others. This does happen. Therefore, I think we need a specific kind of wisdom to observe the goals we set, even if we think they're right. In reality, such goals, as I just mentioned, for ourselves and for others, especially for our society, or rather, our altruistic intentions towards society, are very important for each individual. Even if you don't achieve your goal, the altruistic mindset still has some positive effects. This is extremely important. Nowadays, most people live centered around their own personal interests. What is the purpose of life for many people? I often say this: there are three kinds of purposes for living. If you are a person of the highest caliber, you live for society and to help others. If you are a person of the middle caliber, you live for your family, relatives, and friends. If you are a person of the lowest caliber, you live only for yourself. As long as you don't starve or take your own life, simply staying alive is enough. As long as you are alive, that's enough. That's your only goal. So everyone has a different definition of their life goals.
Thank you, Master.
Hello, Master. First of all, I would like to thank you so very much for providing us with such an incredibly clear and accessible lecture today. Since this year is my final graduation year, to be more precise about it, I will be completing my graduation in the next 1 or 2 months. Therefore, I am facing a rather significant and life-altering decision in my life. Should I choose to work or should I continue my studies? So I realized that in our lives, we often encounter these very important choices. Some people have told me that when you are making a decision, you need to carefully weigh the pros and cons. Make your judgment based on certain reasons or considerations you have. Others have told me you simply need to listen carefully to what your heart is trying to tell you. Whatever it is that you want to do, just go ahead and make it happen. So what I would like to ask the Master is, how do you personally view this specific issue? Or when we are faced with making very important and crucial choices, what kind of guidance do you think we should follow? Thank you.
I am from Tibet. I am Tibetan. There is an old traditional saying among the Tibetan people about how to make difficult choices. It says that the very highest method of offering choices to others is also called putting yourself in someone else's shoes. In other words, when you ask me to answer some of your questions, I would answer from your perspective and you would answer from mine. For choices like the ones you're facing, when your life is already at a crossroads and you don't know which direction to take, at that moment, if I were in your shoes, I would take a look at my own personal circumstances and my conditions. If all the conditions are right for me, I feel that learning is the most meaningful, most brilliant, and most positive way to live in this world. It is the most effective way to realize one's own value. Therefore, I will persist in my studies. If there are some other special circumstances, for example, if I can't work right now, maybe there are certain things that make it impossible for me to achieve this, then that's a different matter entirely. So for myself, maybe it's because I really enjoy the process of learning. And I also value a variety of different things in the world, but I think the absolute most essential thing in the world is the pursuit of knowledge and learning, regardless of whether you are currently a student or you should study while you're working. If you have better opportunities to keep learning, you should keep learning and focusing on your education until you reach a certain level. Once you have achieved that, pursuing a career later will be much easier for you. So, if I were in your position, and if all the necessary conditions are met, I would continue my studies without hesitation. I need to further improve my wisdom and personal abilities to become a more perfect individual. In this world, learning should really be the most meaningful and happiest thing.
Hello, Khenpo. I am full of hope and anticipation for my youth. But I actually happened to see Khenpo's newly released and recently published book. This piece is titled Youth is Cruel. So honestly, I don't quite understand why youth is so cruel. Thank you very much for that.
You might not fully understand this right now, but when you finally reach your 20s, I want you to think back to that statement. Is youth truly a time full of bright hope and happiness, or is it actually something cruel? You may still be following the path of your hopes. When you reach a certain point during your youth as you seek your joy and happiness, you need to be strong. Only then will you understand the true meaning of what you learn in books.
Thank you.
Respected Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche, I am a current doctoral student at Nanyang Technological University. My professional research primarily focuses on the vital fields of environmental protection and sustainable wastewater treatment processes. Regarding my question today, the renowned Changyang Gyatso once composed a very famous poem, and the final two poignant lines of that poem say, "How can one have both in this world, neither failing the Buddha nor failing you?" Although this poem expresses deep feelings of love from another perspective, it also reflects the idea that worldly pursuits and transcendental spiritual pursuits cannot be accomplished simultaneously. Just now, Master also mentioned in the lecture that the primary purpose of taking spiritual refuge is not just, for example, to protect us from unforeseen car accidents when we drive. In fact, the purpose of taking refuge is to seek ultimate liberation in the next life, and even to successfully achieve the most supreme fruit of Buddhahood. So, my question for you is, when we truly understand and come to realize this truth, how should we find a proper balance between our worldly pursuits and transcendental pursuits? You also mentioned the important issue of goals just now. If I were to set specific worldly goals for myself, do you think that this will hinder my personal pursuit of achieving transcendental liberation? I would appreciate your guidance on this. Thank you very much, Master.
The worldly and transcendental principles composed and articulated by Changyang Gyatso should have two distinct layers of profound meaning. On one level, those verses that we commonly refer to as Changyang Gyatso's love songs explore the deep emotional attachments that individuals around the world are especially fixated on. And they also contain many beautiful and deeply moving linguistic expressions. Furthermore, they vividly depict various scenes of people's complex emotions at that specific time. At the same time, he also spoke about some of the relationships between Buddhism and society. Regarding this issue, in this world, there are two layers of meaning that can be analyzed. One layer of meaning is that we must consistently pursue our own personal goals and aspirations. Although this is a worldly pursuit, Buddhism also teaches that while we are pursuing our worldly goals, we should always strive to be good and kind people, consistently practice virtuous deeds, and refrain from doing any form of evil. The true doctrine of Buddhism is to avoid all evil and practice all good. This is the basic requirement for everyone. Some people think that nowadays Buddhism doesn't allow this or that. Actually, that's not the case. Within Buddhism, it is just about our level or stage. It's like in a university. If it's a national university, it might be different from other schools. It has its own methods and codes for developing a complete character. This is one of the traditional practices of Buddhism. Worldly Dharma and transcendental Dharma, When we are just beginning to learn, there is no conflict between them. If you transcend the mundane world and reach a significantly higher state, at that point, in the face of that state, there may be some things in the mundane world that should be let go of, that should be abandoned. Those things can indeed be abandoned. At such times, there are also certain things and opportunities that we must be prepared to give up. For example, if we decide to attend a university, it has its own unique set of academic requirements. When you are living your life and making these choices, I heard that in Singapore, every man has to serve in the military. During their military service, there are certain rules and disciplines, which are quite different from the rules and disciplines in other areas of everyday life. In the same way, in Buddhism, for example, if you become a monastic or if you become another type of practitioner, certain worldly behaviors compared to those of ordinary people are not permitted within that context. We also see this in the secular world. Just like how some behaviors of men during military service are different from our usual behaviors, they are not the same at all. So we cannot take certain aspects from one context that are somewhat at odds and mix them together. There should also be aspects that are at odds and some that are not. But all of them can be integrated.
All right, thank you, Master. Thank you, teacher.
Respected Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche, hello everyone. I am currently working at Lianhe Zaobao as a dedicated media professional. I would like to ask a question that specifically follows up on the very interesting point just raised by the lady earlier. She was just asking you, among Buddhism, Christianity, and other religions, why is Buddhism your preferred choice of faith? And my question is, within Tibetan Buddhism, there are several schools, Nyingma, Sakya, and so on. Could you share with us the reasons why you chose the Nyingma school? Also, could you kindly give a simple explanation of the main differences among the Nyingma, Sakya, Gelug, Kagyu, and Jonang traditions for everyone here? Thank you.
Actually, my choice of the Nyingma school was not a deliberate one. Indeed, the question you asked is quite similar to the one the lady just asked. So my way of answering will have to be the same as how I answered her previous question. Because when I came into this world and saw this world, the environment around me, including my parents, were all Nyingma practitioners. So it is closely related to my perspective as well. It's not that I deliberately thought, today I will seek out a Nyingma master, or that my parents, family, and the surrounding monasteries were all Nyingma. It's not like that. Being born into this world, the environment one finds oneself in is shaped by causes and conditions. There are a significant number of distinct and diverse schools within Tibetan Buddhism. Generally speaking, there are mainly 8 major schools. Among these traditions, the most fundamental one, the Nyingma school, literally means the old school. The Gelug school is referred to as the new school. Then there is the Sakya school, which is named after a place. Sakya is a location, and the school is named after this place. There is also the Kagyu school, which is named based on the meaning of the Buddha's Dharma. And there are other schools such as the Jonang school. Actually, to understand the differences between them, the central practice of the Nyingma school is Dzogchen, or the Great Perfection. The Sakya school mainly focuses on the path and fruit teachings. The Jonang school is centered on the realization of Tathagata Garbha and the Kalachakra teachings. The Kagyu school primarily emphasizes Mahamudra, or the Great Seal. As a result, the specific spiritual practices they focus on are also slightly different, and there is also the distinctive background of the original founder of every specific school. The history of the founders and the living environments at their respective times were also different, including the Nyingma school, which was the first to arrive in Tibet. In our Tibetan Buddhism, Guru Padmasambhava was the one who initially spread the Dharma from India to the land of Tibet. Chronologically, the Nyingma school is called the Old School, so in many aspects there are differences. But in fact, the doctrines of Tibetan Buddhism all begin with the generation of bodhicitta. In the middle, one needs to accumulate merit and finally attain Buddhahood. Just as in Chinese Buddhism, there are various schools such as Pure Land, Huayan, Chan, Esoteric, and so on. There are many different sects, and it's the same situation. Beyond just the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, I have also observed that there are many different schools within Theravada Buddhism. In fact, the ultimate meaning and the fundamental teachings of these various different schools do not really conflict with each other. They are complementary and interconnected.
Hello there, Master. I work at the National University of Singapore. What I would like to ask you, Master, is this. You just recently mentioned the principle to do no evil and practice all good. So, when a person faces difficult choices in their life, how can one maintain right mindfulness? How can one distinguish between what is good and what is evil? What actions should be taken and what should not be done? At what stage is it considered that one has done what is within the scope of one's own ability? Master, please provide your wise guidance.
What is truly good and what is evil? We must learn this. Good can be categorized as not killing, not committing sexual misconduct, and not stealing. These pertain to the body. This is how it is generally explained in Buddhism. There are also aspects related to speech. Do not speak falsehoods, do not use harsh language, do not sow discord, and do not engage in frivolous talk. Then, in terms of the mind, do not give rise to greed, do not harbor harmful intentions, and do not hold wrong views. These are called the 10 good deeds. The opposite of these 10 are called the 10 evils. So, in Buddhism, generally speaking, our actions are summarized as the 10 good or 10 unwholesome deeds. They are categorized in terms of body, speech, and mind. Many of us who are present here today may also have witnessed this. Why did Buddhism establish these rules? I often tell others that, in fact, more than 2,000 years ago, the Buddha provided us with such a clear summary of speech and behavior. If we have such a good framework for summarizing these, nowadays every country talks about civilization and morality. But many of the issues we face, including pervasive corruption and personal greed, as well as various crises occurring throughout our world, are also caused by these 10 specific unwholesome actions. When we begin to analyze them carefully one by one, it actually turns out that the 10 wholesome virtues taught in ancient Buddhism are actually a summary and guideline for our speech and behavior. They serve to provide a kind of conclusion and a formal standardization. At this particular stage, everyone will also begin to understand that if we learn about this in much more detail and more broadly, there are also detailed and profound descriptions of good and evil found within the related Buddhist scriptures. Similarly, other religions also have their own descriptions of what is considered good and evil. Of course, there are some minor differences in certain places, but the general idea is always to protect the positive energies of humans and all sentient beings, to maintain positive energy and try to eliminate negative energy. That's why I often use the terms good and evil, positive energy and negative energy, because nowadays people often use these words. From my own observation, so-called positive energy can actually be replaced by the word good. Whether it's for oneself or for others, using this word for body, speech, and mind is the best choice.
Honorable Khenpo Sodargye, respected master, I am currently serving as a dedicated academic researcher at the prestigious Singapore Institute, and it is a great honor to speak with you today. I would like to ask you a quick question, master. It is my personal belief that people really have a wide variety of distinct levels. From the very moment a person is born, due to the inherent variations in their natural intelligence, as well as distinct differences in education, and a variety of other aspects acquired later on in their lives, people actually exist and function on a wide variety of distinct levels. And at various different levels, people's inner thoughts and moral perceptions often differ between what is good and what is evil. Moreover, the issues they think about are also different. I would like to ask Khenpo, based on your own experience, how can a person truly elevate their level? What methods are the most effective and fastest?
In Buddhism, we have a scripture called the Agama Sutra. In the Agama Sutra, it is mentioned that the wisdom of sentient beings varies in degree, and there are differences in wealth between rich and poor. There are differences in lifespan. Some live longer, some shorter, and differences in appearance. Some are beautiful, some are not. What are the reasons for all these differences? In fact, all sentient beings are inheritors and bearers of karma. Karma from previous lives plays a certain role in this. Everyone here should also be aware of this. Even those graduating from the same school eventually take different paths. Even those born to the same parents end up with different living conditions. Even identical twins, their overall happiness later in life is also different. So even if two people work very hard, one may achieve success while the other may fail. This is exactly why I firmly believe in what the Buddha taught, that all sentient beings are the bearers and inheritors of their own karma. Certainly, and speaking from my own personal experience, in fact, if anyone actually wants to improve themselves, they should try to reduce selfishness as much as possible and try to cultivate a heart that helps others as much as possible. Then your drive and all your actions will be elevated in every way. But if every day you only think about yourself and harm others, with this kind of mindset, it may seem on the surface that you are making progress in certain areas. But in reality, you are losing ground in terms of morality, ethics, and conscience. So I sincerely hope that if we want to improve ourselves, first and foremost, it is best to have an unconditional desire to help others. If you don't have this, so then, at the very least, try to spend the majority of your time each day helping those around you. Once you have established this solid foundation, everything you do will definitely improve significantly. However, if you are completely selfish, and this selfishness is also incredibly narrow-minded, your progress will be limited and your perspective stays restricted. It may bring a lot of pain to your family and your colleagues as well. Generally, when people open their minds and have an attitude of tolerance, and at the same time do our utmost to benefit others, even when others try to harm me, I grow stronger and courageous. Moreover, all kinds of complaints and voices from others toward me have become a very favorable condition for my spiritual practice. It is also the single most effective and reliable method to foster achievement and success in life.
Thank you, Khenpo.
All right, that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you all for your enthusiastic questions and the Master's wonderful answers. We hope everyone found answers and relief during this session and gained understanding and peace of mind.